All right. Hello, my name is Christine Nightingale. I'm Head of Equality here at De Montfort University, and I've had the pleasure to be involved in Parliament Week this year and also in the debate that happened one evening in November. The focus of the debate was women's contribution to democracy, and the position I took on my blog was to think about how women contribute through means other than just being at very senior levels in Parliament, in politics. And I wanted to think about politics with a small p, really. So I had a look at the data on women who are in senior leadership roles in the public sector and in the voluntary sector. And through reading reports such as Women on Boards, Sex and Power, which shows a shockingly low number of women who have reached executive positions in the senior police, in the military, in the armed forces, and so on. So, for example, I think there's about 1% of women who are senior police officers. So we know that we've got a long way before women can make their voices heard at leadership positions where hopefully they can make a contribution to our democracy in this country. There are some signs of progress. For example, women are more present as head teachers in secondary schools and in further education colleges, which is fantastic because I think they have an opportunity to really influence the next generation of women through role modelling. One of the things we were asked to think about was also our own career progression, where we'd been, and I had to think about what impact I'd had on and contribution I'd had to democracy. And I've been very fortunate in my work and my career that I've been a senior nurse working with children and adults with disabilities. I've advised the government on inclusive learning. I've taught people to read and to count and numeracy skills and so on. And I've also been a senior lecturer in other universities, teaching future generations of nurses and carers. So I think there's real possibilities that women through their work can influence people and to make changes and to model good practice. I've also done quite a lot of research on barriers to healthcare and research on getting into education and learning. So I hope that in my own way I've made a contribution to democracy through reports I've written and books I've written and papers I've written and so on. The second part of my blog really looked at what were the barriers to women rising up through the career ladder and even breaking the glass ceiling. As I've said earlier, that there is a shockingly low number of women on executive board level jobs at the moment. So I wanted to think about the systematic processes, and I looked back to what the Macpherson report said when they were investigating the Stephen Lawrence murder, and they were talking here about institutional racism, but I think some of the things they said were really pertinent to systematic issues generally. So the Macpherson report, and as I said, I'm going to paraphrase it, referred to institutional racism as the collective failure of an organisation to provide an appropriate and professional service to people. And they went on to say it can be seen or detected in processes, attitudes and behaviour which amount to discrimination, and they go on. So they were talking about racism, but I think what they're really saying is that processes, policies and processes and ways that people who work in institutions behave, which put up barriers to people of different race and ethnicity, to women, to people who are disadvantaged in various ways or less well represented in society. So in conclusion, I think that it's all of our roles, whether we're men or women, to be very aware of the institutions that we work in and the institutions that we play in as well, whether it's interest groups or societies, and to look at how they're constructed, what's the underpinning policy of them, and to be really aware of the barriers that these policies may be putting up for people to progress through them and to participate fully and have equality of opportunity. So if that's one message I leave Parliament Week is, all of us have a duty to be very aware of policies, behaviours and practices which lead to indirect discrimination.